people still joining, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Today is a wonderful day because we have a great webinar that we're about to start right now. A look at employment trends using new interactive construction chart book dashboards. I am Chris Kane. I am CPWR's Executive Director, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. I'm extremely excited to have our data team here. We call them the data center, but data center seems to mean new things these days, where we started calling the team the data center a long time ago. But anyway, these are our data people. Very excited to have you here and present on some recent industry trends and highlight our new chart book data dashboards. First of all, we have Amber Trueblood. Dr. Trueblood is the Data Center Director. She is joined by Derek Dufoe, Research Assistant, and William Harris, Research Analyst. This is our data team, and with that, I'll hand it over to Amber to get started.
Thank you, Chris, for that wonderful introduction. Get the screen set up here. So thank you, everyone, for joining today. CPWR's Data Center team, we're extremely excited to be here today. We're really excited about the launch of these interactive construction chart book dashboards. If many of you have been following us for the last few years, we've been talking about the development and overcoming some of the challenges. We've overcome all of those, and now we're here to present them. So I'm joined today with William Harris and Derek, who Chris mentioned, are data analysts within the data center. And today, we aim to provide updated construction industry employment trends. That's our main goal today, based on data from the 7th edition Construction Chart Book. Through today's presentation, we also hope to showcase our new interactive dashboards. And if you're familiar with CPWR's Data Center, you know we have our data bulletins and a series of dashboards. The dashboards up to this point were simple, about 4 charts, filter. You could update the chart based on year, major subsector, different fields depending on the data set, and the charts would automatically update. We heard a lot of complaints, not everyone are data people. They don't want to look at a chart and have to interpret the key findings and key takeaways. So we worked really hard internally and so built on our prior dashboards through the addition of dynamic key findings that update based on selected filters. So when you're like, CPWR already has dashboards, these are new and improved dashboards, and they really complement the the construction chart book content. We try to get it as close as we could to one-to-one match there, with the dashboards having additional data, because again, once you have a PDF chapter of something, you're pretty limited in what can be shown, but our dashboards have unlimited capacity there. So that is what we've built on and what we're going to highlight. We have a full webinar plan today, so let me go ahead and pass things over to Derek, who's going to highlight overall employment trends for the industry.
Thank you, Amber. Next slide, please. So I'll be taking a look at a few, back a little bit, Amber, thanks. I'll be taking a look at a few general employment trends within the construction industry. And this data is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Current Population Survey. Next slide, please. And since 2011, there's been a considerable change in the employment trends within the construction workforce, most notably among aging, women, non-white, and Hispanic workers. And these trends are very similar to the overall employment trends of the entire U.S. workforce. Next slide, please. And we'll first be taking a look at the proportion of construction workers by race. But before we do that, I'd like to take a look at this chart on the right here. And this chart is actually part of one of our newly released interactive dashboards, part of our 7th edition construction chart book. And this chart, like the rest of the charts that I will be showing you, is from a dashboard titled Demographics of Construction Workers. And if you are interested in seeing this chart book, dashboard, it is located on our CPWR website. And from 2011 to 2023, the percentage of white workers has decreased 4.8%, falling from around 91.9% in 2011 down to around 87.5% in 2023. And during the same period, the percentage of non-white workers in construction increased 54.6%, accounting for around 8% in 2011, down up to around 12.5% in 2023. And if we take a little deep dive into this group of non-white workers, we can check out the change in employment by race. And from 2011 to 2023, the total number of Black workers in construction increased 62%, from around 494,000 in 2011 up to around 796.1 thousand in 2023. And the percentage of Asian workers in construction increased to around 52%. They increased from about 135,000 in 2011 up to around 205,000 in 2023. And the total number of Hawaiian and Pacific Islander construction workers really blew up to over 320%. They increased their workforce total from about 14,000 in 2011 to around 60.1 thousand in 2023. And lastly, the total number of American Indian, Aleut, and Eskimo construction workers increased about 90%. They increased their total workforce from about 80.9 thousand in 2011 up to around 154,000 construction workers in 2023. Now, I don't have the total employment numbers on this slide. However, if you are interested in checking those out, you can check out this demographics of construction workers dashboard. And on this chart here, you can hover over this orange line here. And this orange line represents the percentage of non-white workers. And when you hover over it, it gives you the total employment by race for a given year. So it's a pretty cool tool to check out. Next slide, please. Now, another really interesting trend we've been seeing here is this rise in aging workers in the construction workforce. And from 2011 to 2023, the total number of workers 55 years or older has really ballooned from 1.5 million in 2011 to over 2.5 million in 2023, which is about a 66% increase in their workforce total, and about a 26% increase in their share of the construction workforce, accounting for about 16.9% of the workforce in 2011 to around 21.3% in 2023. And if we take a look at the percentage of construction workers over 65 years or older, they increased their share by over 72%, increasing it from around 3.1% in 2011 up to around 5.4% in 2023. Meanwhile, however, the percentage of construction workers 25 to 34 years old declined by 10.2%, falling from 25% to around 22.4%. So we really see this rise in aging workers in construction. Next slide, please. Thank you. If we break this down by sex, you will see that the percentage of women workers in construction increased by 18.2%, rising from 9.2% in 2011 up to around 10.8% in 2023. Men workers declined slightly by about 1.8%. Their share fell from 90.8% to around 89.2%. Next slide, please. Now, another really interesting trend we've been seeing here is this boom of Hispanic workers in construction. And from 2011 to 2023, the share of Hispanic workers in construction rose 39.7%, whereas the share of non-Hispanics fell 12.8%. And I think this chart on the right here really does a great job of just detailing this information. For example, let's take a look at 2011 here. In 2011, the share of Hispanics is about a quarter, about 24% of the construction workforce in 2011, whereas the percentage of non-Hispanics is around 75.7%, so a huge chunk of the workforce. However, as the years go by, this gap between non-Hispanics and Hispanics gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then about to reach 2023, the share of Hispanics in construction is about a third, about 34%. whereas the percentage of non-Hispanics has fallen to 66%. And in this time period, in this period here, the total number of Hispanics in construction went from 2.2 million in 2011 all the way up to 4 million in 2023. So there's really big rise here in Hispanic construction workers. And it's really very interesting trend. All these trends are interesting, but this one is very interesting. And I think to speak more on this Hispanic employment trends, I will pass it over to William.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Derek. I'm going to share my screen now to talk about Hispanic employment and demographics using our similarly titled interactive page as part of our construction chart book. In order to share my screen, Amber, I'll need you to, thank you. So let me see if I can get this. There we go. So as Derek just covered, using current population survey data, we saw that for the first time in 2022, Hispanic employment construction reached a point where 1 in 3 workers was Hispanic within the construction workforce, that being up from about 1 in 4 workers in 2011. Tracking our Hispanic population within construction is important because the health outcomes and injury risks that these workers face are often at times increased depending on the injury type. For example, falls in construction. We know that we have more Hispanic workers who die from these fatal falls. And as a result, this dashboard serves to provide a greater focus on this critical population of construction workers. So unlike the statistics that Derek has shown you so far, the data that forms the backbone of the charts that I'm about to show you come from the American Community Survey. And these one-year survey files better track changing population of Hispanic workers. And as a result, some of the numbers and proportions that you'll see in these charts aren't going to match up one-to-one with the data that we've shown you so far. However, the American Community Survey adds a bunch of questions that allow us to further flesh out the what we know about the Hispanic population in construction, and so these limitations come with some benefits as well. And so this is the actual dashboard page. I'll be starting by looking at our Hispanic employment by year. Using American Community Survey data, we see that on average from 2020 to 2022, there were 3.3 million Hispanic construction workers in the United States, and accounting for 30.2% of the construction worker population from those years. If you're curious as to why these charts start in 2020, it's because in 2020 there were some changes to how Hispanic was defined by the U.S. Census Bureau and other organizations within the U.S. government to better capture this population. And so the counts became more accurate starting in 2020. Although if you are interested using this dashboard page, you can look at historical data as well. I'm going to zero in specifically on the year 2022 using our filters as we look at Hispanic employment by state. Within the southwestern United States, we see that Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and California are the 5 states that have the highest proportion of their construction workforce that are Hispanic. But notably, I want to point out that Texas and California both have extremely large populations of construction workers overall. And so Texas itself has almost 800,000 Hispanic workers within it. California has 740,000 workers. And even states that don't have as high proportion, for example, Florida, still employ a large number of the construction workforce that we see within the United States and have a large component of that workforce as Hispanic. And so when we're looking at trends by state, or when we're looking at areas within the United States that require additional attention or additional needs from us, it's important that we think about the geographic component and know kind of where these workers are situated, as that is relevant in terms of access to resources and various different laws that may apply within certain jurisdictions in the United States. Moving on to detailed Hispanic ethnicity, the Hispanic workforce within construction is not a monolith, and being able to understand their interior demographic breakup based on which Hispanic countries they come from or have their heritage from is important in reaching these workers. And so within the United States, we do see that 62.5% of the Hispanic construction workforce is of Mexican descent. Furthermore, we see 4.4% are Puerto Rican and 3.2% are Cuban. This remaining 29.9% are workers who come from other backgrounds. These can include El Salvador, Ecuador, Colombia, and other Central and Southern American countries that speak Spanish. And upon request, we can also take a look into these more detailed demographic categories as well, although we don't go into them in this chart. Additionally, there are variations among construction occupations. And so this chart here covers those occupations that have historically had either high numbers of Hispanic workers or high proportions of Hispanic workers. And so we see that within construction in 2022, drywall had one of the highest proportions of their workforce Hispanic, with over 2 in 3 drywall workers being of Hispanic ethnicity. This is then followed by roofers, who have 58.2% of their workforce is Hispanic, alongside painters. And then laborers, one of the most populous groups on this chart. There's almost 900,000 Hispanic workers accounted for here, and they make up just over half of the construction laborers within the United States workforce. Notably, I do want to draw attention to the construction managers and manager occupations. These employ a lot of Hispanic workers as well. However, the percentage of these occupations that are accounted for by Hispanic workers doesn't match with the overall population of Hispanic workers within the construction industry. And so there's potentially some gaps there in terms of getting Hispanic workers into leadership positions within construction companies as well. And moving on, I'm going to take another deep dive into the demographics of Hispanic construction workers.
Hey, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to ask you
Oh,
a
yeah.
question right now, William, to
Of course.
completely put you on the spot. Because I
Yeah.
think what you have up on the screen is our actual page on our website that is part of this interactive chart book. And someone asked a question that I'd love for you to answer right now, and also tell other people how we define things and why we define things. So the question is, how are we defining Hispanic?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so if you can describe, for the purposes of this chart book page, how can people know what we're defining as Hispanic, our data sources, are there definitions available, that type of thing?
Yeah, of course. So the way that these pages are set up is you have the content material here, but also because we do use a variety of data sources, we have these accordions at the bottom that talk about where our data comes from. And so, for example, clicking this about the data arrow, you can see that this comes from the American Community Survey, which I discussed, as well as specific definitions that we use within the dashboard. And so, for instance, within this dashboard, because we talk about Hispanic workers, it's important that we establish what that means. And so this definition here, the definition that we use within this page in this context comes from the data source of the American Community Survey. And so here we define Hispanic as a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture of origin. And this includes people who reported detailed Hispanic or Latino groups, regardless of their race. One of the exceptions is it mentions Central American, any South or Central American. This definition of Hispanic does exclude Brazilians because Brazilians speak Portuguese and also don't necessarily identify with the label of Hispanic. And so the Census Bureau has historically excluded those members.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for letting me jump in and maybe even jump ahead on something somebody else was going to talk about.
Yeah,
But
of course.
the question came up, I thought in the moment it might be helpful to show exactly what we mean by Hispanic and where the information comes from. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important in terms of interpretation as well as making sure that we're not all itching for an answer to a burning question while we're going through some important.
And then William, I'm going to do something unprecedented because Chris did it. So the other thing I just want to highlight on this page, as William's been scrolling, you've probably seen a blue hyperlink multiple times. We really promote if there's any questions or if you disagree with the definition, you want to talk more about our methods, always reach out to us at datacenter@cpwr.com. That email is accessible from the entire team. So all of us see that. If it's a methods question, we'll get together and respond. And we're always happy to jump on a call. So if at any time you're like, I'm not sure this makes sense from my perspective, we're happy to talk through it. Or if you're like, I have data that conflicts, we're happy to talk about our data source versus other sources. So thank you. Sorry, William.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, of course, always open to questions. And yes, do reach out to us at datacenter@cpwr.com if you have any questions about any of our publications, really. But moving ahead, on the demographics of Hispanic workers in construction, we'll be looking at trends from 2020 to 2022. Generally speaking, within construction, Hispanic workers are younger than their non-Hispanic counterparts. For example, when we look at the distribution by age in this first chart, we can see that 35.6% of Hispanic workers were between 16 and 34 years old, whereas only 29.9% of non-Hispanic workers were between those two ages. We can also see a difference in the average age of these workers. For example, the average age from 2020 to 2022 of Hispanic workers was 39.7 years old, while for non-Hispanic workers, it was 43.8 years old. During this time period, we also looked at distributions by sex. So we see that of non-Hispanic workers, 12.7% were female, whereas for Hispanic workers, 7.5% were female. So there's some differences in the distributions within these ethnic categories as well. And lastly, we also cover educational attainment by ethnicity. And we can see that of the construction workforce, 41.4% have not received a high school diploma or equivalent, compared to the non-Hispanic workers within construction, for which only 9% of that workforce had not received either a high school diploma or a GED. And with that, that's the end of my content. And so I will go ahead and pass things over to Amber to share her screen again.
Amber,
And
you're on
Amber, you're
mute.
muted.
I even clicked it. Sorry. Yeah, you guys have to sometimes check me. My right hand doesn't work right. Thank you, William, for the great live demo. Highlighting employment trends with our newly published Hispanic Employment and Demographics Dashboard. While it's fresh on our mind, the second follow-up question based on our definition was about Hispanic workers having higher injury rates and why we say that. And so based on numbers alone, we'll jump down here. You can see clearly on our non-fatal injuries here, fatal injuries here, I apologize. This is from our December 2024 data bulletin looking specifically at Hispanic construction workers. A majority of actual injuries by count occur among non-Hispanic workers. However, when we look at the overall rate, and rates are really important when we're looking at injuries because that accounts for our worker population, so our number of workers. And so when we account for our workforce, Hispanic workers have a higher rate of fatal injuries at 10.3 per 100,000 FTEs or full-time equivalents, compared to 8.7 for our non-Hispanic workers. And so that's where all of our data comes from when we say Hispanic construction workers have a higher injury rate compared to non-Hispanic construction workers. And if at any time you want supplemental data, feel free. This is not related directly to today besides the question, but I thought while it was here, I was on our website, go ahead and answer it for the individual who wanted that. I cannot see the chat, but saw something popped up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Amber, if you don't mind slowing down just a little bit more for the interpretation, that would be
Okay.
great. And Chris did put that data bulletin in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
So I thought I would start. We had a pre-submitted question about how to get to data center products. I think in general, I tend to have things bookmarked right here at the top, as you can see. Jess, anyone interject if I'm still talking too fast. So once you go to CPWR.com, you go to Research Data Center, or if you know what you're looking for, you can click one of those links there. And today we are talking about the Construction Chart Book. So we'll go ahead and click there here in a minute. But first, the data report, the data bulletin I just showed you, that all of those are published here on this webpage. And we publish these every other month. So 6 data bulletins come out a year. These are, I'm just going to take the opportunity to highlight these, even though it wasn't in the original plan, but we're here. 6 data bulletins a year, 12 charts on average with a short paragraph. When I say short, I'm talking 3 to 5 sentences highlighting key findings for the chart. In addition, we give you 5 key takeaways, the main messages that my team identified when we were looking at that specific topic. So that's where you can find that Hispanic employment and injury trend data bulletin that was published in December, as well as our latest aging and retirement trend. So let's go ahead and go back, and we'll get back on track here. So the Construction Chart Book, many of you are familiar with the Construction Chart Book, which has been published since the 1990s. We are going into the 7th edition. 6th edition has been out for a while. That one had an e-version, which was essentially static web pages with downloadable charts. Our former director, Sue Dong, many of you are familiar with her. One of her goals was to use these data dashboards, get data out, and then we further built on that with these dynamic key findings, and that's what we're going to highlight today. And then I just want to, before I click, highlight that this is a partial release. The dashboards are being published as they're ready, and as soon as all of the dashboards are up, the corresponding PDF will come out since they complement one another. And we are looking to have that published early this summer. And if you have any suggestions or reactions, you don't think something's user-friendly, or you'd like more information on X, Y, and Z, please just, again, reach out to us directly. So today I'm going to be talking about employment projection. We've heard some general trends, what we've seen ongoing. We heard specific Hispanic employment trends. And now I thought it would be good to wrap up on the projections or what changes we see occurring to our workforce. So here we are on the employment projections dashboard page. As it opens up, every single one of these has a nice introduction. We explain any filters that are going to be present so you're aware of them. And again, those filters are the ones that will update the dynamic text. So employment projections, why do we Why are we interested? But they allow us to predict changes to our workforce and prepare for their needs, as well as potential employment gaps or shortages that may arise. And you'll see that a lot. We have a lot of age chapters coming out in the next month. And a lot of that is talking about, as workers retire, as they're leaving the workforce, what gaps exist. And so this allows us to predict the needs of the industry, as well as from a safety and health perspective, know who is in the workforce and how do we reach them. And this is especially important for the construction industry. As you heard from Derek and William, the industry is changing. So let's go ahead and jump into our data dashboard here, our employment projections by state. So we'll go ahead and it defaults to the period 2022 to 2032. That is a projection period defined by our data source here. And we looked at by state. And so the darker the orange, the fastest growth predicted. And so what we do see is Utah has the fastest. It's predicted to increase 31% during this time period. Idaho following by 24% increase, and Montana. And they all lump together here. So geographically, we do start to see a spatial pattern there. And then the light blue or the lighter orange colors indicate our slowest projected rate of growth. So during this period, we are actually seeing Maine, who will see a decrease in construction employment by almost 3% from 2022 to 2032. Now, here's our chart level filter. That's what I was talking about. We sometimes have dashboards, so it'll be right here. That would update everything. And this chart level filter. We also have 2023 to 2025, which is our short-term projection. So we are provided with short-term and longer-term. Short-term projections are a little bit more stable. But as you can see, we're in 2025. So if we want to see longer-term, we would go back up to the long-term projection. But looking short-term in 2020, from 2023 to 2025, we see Tennessee, Texas, and Alaska are the three states with the fastest projected rate of growth at about 7% for all three. And then we do also see decreases in employment for New York and Idaho. And again, we summarize key findings here, but you can also, if you're interested, let's say I'm actually from Texas, so I'm real passionate about the state of Texas. I want to see what's happening. And so from 2023 to 2025, we see, again, about a 7% change in growth for Texas. Okay, now I'm going to jump down to occupations because that seems to be a fan favorite. And so today, let's say I'm interested in construction laborers. William pointed out them on his chart, and so these kind of stood out to me. And so what we see for construction laborers, we see a projected increase by 8.2% for this occupation from 2022 to 2032. We see 115,000 jobs being gained, or the job growth, and then 121,000 separations on average. And now I may have lost you, right? You're like, what is a separation? And that was a little bit jump ahead. So I wanted to highlight here, if we ever use a term that you're not familiar with, it should be down here in our definition section. And we try to do a very good job of looking at it from a high level perspective. If you don't know the data set, would you actually understand what we're talking about, as well as many internal review with non-data individuals. But if something's ever missing from the definition section, please, again, reach out and we'll address that. So here we can see at a high level, separations measure the number of workers who are projected to leave an occupation. This includes individuals who retire, leave the labor force for reasons other than retirement, or they transfer to a different occupation or industry altogether. So that may be a little bit more helpful as we're talking about these projections here by occupation. Now, as you can see from our drop-down menu, there are a lot of occupations listed here. And I want to just take a moment to note on our occupation level data, We try our best to list every single occupation possible. However, sometimes due to small numbers, we do exclude because the estimates aren't reliable. If you're ever on any of our products and you're like, I'd really like information on, let's just throw out roofers, even though I believe they're on this list, but we'll go with roofers. And you want that information, you can always email and we will tell you what data we do have. And we can give you numbers and tell you how to interpret that, but we don't put it widely on this tool because we don't want someone running off with that as, you know, the end all be all statistic, since there's known interpretation issues with that. So we try our best. If your occupation is not listed, again, just reach out. Okay, jumping back up to our projections by subsector, which is another common data request we get within the data center, is by subsector. And when you're looking at this, you're like, okay, Amber, this looks the exact same. It looks like all of our three major subsectors have about a 5% growth, right, from 2023 to 2033 within the construction industry. And you'd be correct. It's pretty stable, 5% across. So you'd say that's comparable. However, once we start examining detailed subsectors, we see there are differences in the expected employment changes. So let's go ahead and jump to heavy and civil engineering and see what's going on with our employment there. So looking at heavy and civil engineering and our more detailed subsectors, we see that there are actual differences pretty significant between the detailed subsectors, with our utility system construction having the highest growth at 5.6% and our land subdivision having the smallest growth at 0.3%. And we see very similar for our construction of buildings, what our non-residential 6%, while residential will have the lowest growth at 3.9%. And there's a lot of really great data that I just don't have the time to go through. So we also look at job openings, separations, and hires, which can help us, again, forecast the need, forecast where we see the industry, and also look at some of those historical trends here. And I also, on our data dashboard pages, I want to highlight 3 accordions. And you saw the definition and chart notes. So if we have definitions, and if there's anything that could impact interpretation, we put that there. If it's a major chart note, we will actually add it on the data dashboard in smaller font, so it's there as well. It just depends on how it impacts our interpretation, and we try not to put too much technical so you guys don't get lost in the weeds. We also cite every data source we use, so you're like, where did CPWR get this? We put that all here. If you ever have questions about our calculations, how we use BLS data and then got to this point, you can always reach out with that. And then our third is the recommended citation. So if you're going to cite, this just helps us track citations. And then in addition, we include data files for all of our data dashboards at this time. And so you would just click this link here and a nice spreadsheet pops up. So a lot of really great information here that allow us to highlight these projections. And I am going to stop sharing while I transition back over to a slide deck and also take a quick peek at the chat, because all I see on my end is a red dot going boop, boop. Okay.
So does that mean you're ready for questions and answers?
Not quite yet. I was just making sure there wasn't something urgent.
There's nothing urgent, but a couple of questions.
Perfect. So I promise we've left time for questions. Okay, I'm going to jump through these. This is exactly what we went over. I did slides as a backup. You can tell some generation differences as William was just ready to screen share. I put a screenshot of his up and then you can see all mine here. So a few differences there. So first, I want to thank you all for hanging through a very data extensive presentation. I know not everyone's a data person. It's actually the #1 comment I think our data center gets is, we love the information your group produces, but I'm not a data person. So thank you if you're not a data person for hanging with us to learn about these products. We hope we've made these data dashboards as user-friendly as possible. So you don't need to be a data person. You can just go to projections, Hispanic employment, demographics, and find the information you need and some really cool key findings. Before ending, I just want to end with an update on the construction chart book and highlight some resources that are relevant today. So as I mentioned, the 7th edition dashboards are being added over the next few months. So keep going back to our website. You can check them monthly. And our update typically in the research section, Bill Wright, our communications director, does a really good job of highlighting any new products there. So that would also be one place to check that out. And if there's a topic that you really want updated information on that you're not seeing, again, email us, because there's a really good chance I have that drafted and it's just in review, because that review process takes a little bit. And again, the PDF is coming this summer and we're really excited to get this out and hope the dashboards are as awesome as we find them in our group here. And then some data center resources. I highlighted a lot of this through my presentation. So the 7th edition employment income and benefits dashboard, definitely highlight all of our employment trends. That's where you're going to find specific topics being covered. And we have a lot more than the 3 that we were able to highlight today. So we just picked a selection. And then recent data bulletins. We actually have 5 employment related data bulletins from 2023 to 2025. And probably another 10 currently listed on our report page, but these are the most recent ones that are available. Okay. In addition to our work, I wanted to highlight CPWR's R2P team and others who work on developing safety and health materials that are hazard specific, such as falls, which I think you guys are all familiar with. If not, definitely go check out our fall resources. In addition, we have pages available with resources that are specific for women in the trades that have been translated. So Jess's team does a phenomenal job of providing resources that are translated. She's also translates into other languages, but we do have a dedicated Spanish resource page that is available. In addition, we have an aging workers page that talks about aging workers, some of the concerns there, as well as links to support a program, legal resources, and other information relevant to the aging workforce. And so those are just some of many, many resources that CPWR has. If you're not familiar, I highly recommend getting on cpwr.com and just checking us out. And now, Chris, we're ready for questions.
We've got a couple. All right, we have a couple, not too many. So if anybody has Q&A, can you pop it in the chat or in the Q&A box? One of the questions was, actually you answered, was related to how we define Hispanic, and then the information about Hispanic accidents or related to rates and things like that. So we pointed to the December data bulletin and the sources that we're using for the definition, because obviously this survey was not done by us. We didn't judge whether someone is Hispanic or not. People identified themselves as such in the survey. So this one question is interesting, and you had mentioned that when people identify issues or questions about your data products, our CPWR data products, that you go and you modify them, or you respond to the question or try to clarify it in your next iteration. Do you keep any kind of like log or frequently asked questions or anything like that about the types of questions that come in on your products?
So great question. So yes, we keep a log of all requests that we get and actually monitor. And sometimes that actually why we have all of the employment trend data bulletins back to back. It's a little rare for the data center to do that many in that space. Were based on requests we were getting about aging workers, Hispanic, women workers. And so we were like, okay, we need to do specific. And so it does guide that. And then the other, I think in the chat, in addition, if you're using some of our historical products, I believe that's what Sue-Ann's asking, and you cite it and then we automatically take it down, what happens? We are working with redirect. So any of our historical pages from 6th edition to 7th edition will automatically redirect to the correct resource. So no one will lose any information. Oh, see, it's fast again. So was that too fast for anyone? Clarification? Chris, did that answer the overall question?
I think it did. And I just wanted to use it as an opportunity to highlight the fact that part of what we do at CPWR, in particular, our data center, our data analyst team, is we ask that the construction industry come to us with questions and that we can answer all that we can. And we view that as a service that we provide to the construction industry at no charge, because we view that as a service under our cooperative agreement with NIOSH, so it's paid for. And we very much want to have individuals come to us and Amber and William and Derek to ask questions on the resources we put out, or if there's missing resources in your views, what they are. What are questions that you can't find the answers to that you may have, things like that. That's why our data center is here, and it's funded as part of our NIOSH National Construction Center Cooperative Agreement. So wanted to throw that in. Another question I got is, will we be printing the 7th edition chart book? And I don't believe that Amber has that information, because that'll probably be my call if we have money in our cooperative agreement left to do it. We're definitely creating the PDFs so that we can print it, or an individual could download it and print it from our website. That's definitely part of the plan. So step by step with these interactive chart books, we're also creating static PDF chart book pages that over the next couple of months will be completed into the chart book in a PDF form. So yes, it will be printed as a PDF. Will it be printed on paper by CPWR and distributed? That's really a budgetary question that we don't know the answer to yet.
And I'm just going to interject. If you want a printed copy, if you could email either myself directly or our data center email that I've said a few times, let me know so that, you know, when it comes time, I can say, hey, Chris, we have X individuals who are interested, and we can kind of weigh that in. It would also help when we go to quote it out, because, you know, are we printing 50 versus 10,000 copies is a very different price quote. So if you could show interest. I do know a few of you that I've seen on the chat active still carry around older editions of the chart book, and I love that. And so, you know, we'll just see where we go. But
yeah, definitely. If we get like a swell of people looking for the printed copy, it's more likely that we'll find the money to do it if we don't have it readily available. I think the last question, because I don't see any more that have come in, but it kind of relates to the question that Sue Ann posed, is maybe a suggestion is, because we are going so kind of high tech in my view of creating these interactive pages to the chart book. It might be useful if there's a frequently asked question portion of this, that, you know, when I think the question that was really, really helpful to us is, how are you defining Hispanic? And just, you know, letting people know we are defining it as the ACS does. And here is the definition that they use, just as an example of the type of questions that others have asked, and we've been able to answer. So because other people will have that same question, and the more we're able to answer it.
So I just want to say, Chris, and I guess our entire audience, you guys are jumping a little bit ahead. So this was our soft launch, but Bill Wright, our communications director, I think our very first planning meeting, I explained what we were doing, and he said, you need a Q&A and a tutorial page of how to use these, because not everyone is going to know, especially those, you know, who are walking around with the 2nd edition chart book and they prefer the PDF. They may not want the data dashboard, and they're very different. And how do they get the same level of information? And so that is actually in our pipeline towards the tail end. And some of the questions today will help guide that. It definitely tells us what people are interested in. And We're a little biased because we developed, and so we're like, oh, it's obvious, it's in the definition, but you know, if you don't know to go look there. So we appreciate that. Any other feedback, again, on using these, or if there's barriers to use that you identify, please definitely reach out and let us know, because our end goal is to get the data out to you guys in a fashion you can use. And so my team, we worked really hard on the data dashboards. We will not be offended though if you come back and you say, I'm having a hard time with this feature. We'll work and try to figure out how to make it as user-friendly as possible. And if that means changing the tech a little bit, we're willing to do that.
Great. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, Amber, William, and Derek, and thanks everyone who participated today and tuned in for this webinar. Stay tuned. More chart book is coming over the next several months. So really appreciate it. Have a great day.